and welcome to episode 96 of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. I'm your host, Robert Simon, Pale Robbie on the boards. I got to start this podcast by saying a giant sorry for keeping you waiting to all of our listeners. We wanted to record in LA at E3, but I will freely admit that I was so dang tired that when it came to a choice between the pillow on my hotel bed or podcasting, I chose the pillow. And that
Who
was
pooped the bed? Rob pooped the bed.
I pooped the bed.
It's
That is
really entirely his fault. I
it
mean,
really is.
none of us were in any way at fault.
Nope. Nope. I take full responsibility for that. So I'm really sorry to the listeners. I really wanted to get a podcast out to you guys right away. But here we are now, and we are going to talk about the E-Thrizzles. 2015 was absolutely insane. I will freely admit that I cried during the Sony press conference as soon as Last Guardian showed up. I saw the cat bat, and I was excited. So
Yep.
we got so much to talk about today. Joining me today, we have three people. The first is regular Derek Heemsbergen.
Hey, what's up? Derek Heemsbergen and Brian on the boards. I like RPGs, and I'm here to talk about them.
Cool. We also have Jeremy, I'm wrong about Dark Souls 3 Harnegi.
It's actually Harnage, sir, and I'm incredibly right about Dark Souls. Also, Jeremy D on the boards.
All right. And then we also have Jesse Wu joining us. Jesse was kind enough to pick me up from the airport, so I think I still owe him like $100.
Hi, folks. I'm the Superdog on the boards.
All right. So E3 2015. I think we're going to start by talking about the press conferences because
they were the best part of the show.
Yeah, because they overshadowed everything else.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think once we got to the show floor, like there were tons and tons of games to play, and it was really, really awesome. But in the back of your head the entire time was this like, I just saw The Last Guardian. I just saw a Final Fantasy VII Remake announcement. I just saw a Shenmue weird Kickstarter thing. There were like all these things in the back of my head that were just like, I want to know more about that stuff, even though it's so far out. But then once you got on the show floor, there were tons of great games to see. But there was like this feeling of all these announcements that we had been waiting years for. Like I first saw that Final Fantasy VII PlayStation 3 demo when I was in college. I was sitting in my college dorm room as an RA, and I saw that demo, and I was like, wow, I really want that. And then we finally got the announcement. So like kind of starting off with the press conferences, Microsoft went first, and I think we all kind of were watching it together. Well, actually, I'm completely getting confused here. Let's start off with Bethesda, because Bethesda proved me wrong, and now we need Rob Was Wrong t-shirts. Fallout 4 announced and is coming out in November. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. How the hell is that game coming out in November?
Crazy.
Well, we're gonna need a lot of Rob Was Wrong shirts, but yeah.
Ooh, let's calm down.
The video
there.
was amazing.
I think Fallout 4 was kind of interesting. Their reveal was, I want to say, a little stilted because they showed the game, and we were all kind of having the comments while watching the feed like, Fallout 4 didn't look that impressive graphically until they fast forwarded to like the actual like post-apocalyptic setting, and then it really started to pop. Like the environment started to look really good. But for them to kind of show the game in that weird way and kind of thumb their nose at all the Reddit posts about how, oh, there's no female character, turns out there is, like you can play a female, and then like in the middle of this huge announcement to take a break and then talk about their like mobile app mini game, just right in the middle of it, which, Jeremy, I think you downloaded that thing, didn't you?
I did. I played it that night. It's actually not bad. It's pretty fun to start with. The in-app purchases after probably like the first 24 hours of hard playing are kind of unfortunate, but for the first like day or so, I really enjoyed it.
And then they started to keep going with Fallout 4, and they showed like kind of a Minecraft element, lots of like building your own base and building your own guns, which I was excited.
I like that. Yeah. I like the whole build your own base thing because I always feel like in games like Fallout and Skyrim, there are all these objects populating the world that don't actually serve any purpose other than to be vendor trash. So it was like, cool, I can pick up that like random ass can of beans and put it in my house if I want. I can make a house full of beans, man. I can do anything I want.
It kind of reminds me of like the cabbage things that people did with Skyrim, where they just have a basement full of them.
It was really cool. Like I think when they started showing off like all the intricacies of the world and kind of the new things that they're doing, I started to get more and more interested. I loved when the character jumped into the power armor and like the UI changed and it like became more of like an action heavy game. That's now slows down time but doesn't completely stop it. And the shooting looked much better. It looked much more responsive because we all, if you played Fallout 3, that game was not a shooter at all. So yeah, Fallout 4 looked really impressive, but then they dropped this megaton of like a November 10th announcement, and I had to sit there and process everything that was coming out this year. Like, I got Bloodborne in March. I'm still playing The Witcher. Metal Gear Solid 5 comes out in September. Fallout in November. Like, if you think for a second that this is a disappointing year for video games, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's so much crap coming out right now. It's like overwhelming. Now,
And Persona 5 too.
well, we're
I
gonna
was
get
about to
Persona.
say.
We're gonna get to Persona. I kind of want to end the show with Persona because they had that little trailer.
Oh, the new trailer is so good.
It is so good.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. But I will say, like, there is a little bit in the back of my head, a little bit of nervousness about that November 10th release date for Fallout. Like, I love Witcher, but it is a little broken in some places. We're hearing reports about Batman Arkham Knight kind of being an absolute mess on PC. Like, I want to believe that Bethesda is going to finish a product and it's going to come out and be relatively bug free. And Fallout 3 had problems when it was released, but overall it was still okay as long as you weren't playing the PlayStation 3 version. But then there's like Fallout New Vegas, which was yikes. So I don't know. I'm a little nervous. Do you guys feel the same way or no?
Definitely. Because Skyrim also had a lot of issues when it first came out, and it's kind of like along the same scope at least.
Mhm.
It was just really frustrating to have it happen that way, but I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just used to it now. I'm kind of expecting it. I don't know. I know that's sad, but I feel like it's gonna happen regardless.
And that's not excusing it either. It just means that you kind of anticipate and can adjust your expectations accordingly.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a sad fact, but there it is.
That's Bethesda.
Yeah. Bethesda also had a lot of other non-RPG stuff. Like I got my Dishonored 2 announcement, which made me really excited. I really like the fact that you're going to be able to pick between female and male character. Emily's going to be playable in the game. That was kind of something that I wanted to talk about a little bit. Not to start throwing out bombs or anything, or really turn this into a big political discussion on the podcast, but to go from a couple years back where all the press conferences were, blood, guts, headshots, explosions, people cheering at the end of that original Last of Us gameplay reveal, to have so many strong female characters present, so many different types of gaming experiences. Yeah, you had your loud Call of Duty announcement at Sony, but overall there were just so many different titles being showcased at these press conferences that it was a little bit of a breath of fresh air, I felt.
And I would say that they were even overshadowed. Like, Sony's biggest announcements were clearly Last Guardian, Shenmue, and FF7. Like, they had their obligatory Call of Duty Black Ops thing, but I don't think a lot of people really cared. It felt like a lot of the crowd was checked out because as we were sitting there, we experienced the applause and the hype in real time as people were freaking out and losing their minds over the remake. And when it came to Call of Duty, the crowd was just like, tepid applause. I don't think that people really want that stuff as much anymore. Does it sell? Absolutely, but it's not the stuff that we're getting excited about because it's been done so often.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's fair. Moving on from Bethesda to Microsoft, we watched the Microsoft press conference, and I think the thing to say about Microsoft is those aren't games that really speak to me personally as a player. Like, I'm not a big Halo guy, I'm not a big Gears guy, I'm not a big Forza guy. But I think if you are into those games, you got really good reveals. I was more interested in Recore, or Recore, however you want to say it. I was interested in that game, but we didn't really learn anything about it. I found that
one with like the Robo Dog in the box.
Yeah. I was interested in that, and for a game that's supposedly coming out in spring, for them to not show like anything about it was a little surprising. I don't understand everybody losing their minds over Rare's Sea of Thieves. I was kind of like, okay, they're making a pirate game.
Yeah.
All right. But like the internet went nuts for that game. Like everyone was like, "Oh my God, Rare!" And I just wanted to be the guy that was like, "Yeah, you see that Rare collection? That's how long ago Rare was relevant, like 15
It's so
years
sad.
ago."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, am I being mean when I say that? Like, did anybody really want a Grabbed by the Ghoulies sequel?
Yeah. Well, the internet just goes nuts for pirate stuff generally, so
Maybe that's it. I mean, it looked interesting, but that was one of those titles that I feel like that's so far off. I can't get excited about it right now. Like, we don't even know what it is.
I don't know, maybe this kind of leads into like the whole console wars and that eternal debate. But I feel like, other consoles have kind of had a lot of these things for a while now. So I mean, if you have an Xbox and you're just, finally getting these like different titles, I can see being excited, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Being, personally a Sony fanboy, I'm like, whatever.
Well, so then we also had EA with Mass Effect Andromeda, or Mass Effect We Wrote Ourselves into a Corner, so now we're going to go to the other side of the galaxy.
You're so cynical, and sometimes I love it.
Is it, I mean, am I right?
In
Like,
this case, yes.
it's kind of a shame, like, reading through some of the lore books for Dragon Age, you can kind of see, like, they've written themselves into a corner by having so many different paths and different takes. Like, they're like, oh, the Inquisitor did this, or maybe he or she didn't. Like, they're kind of like, when you have all of this choice, does the world kind of eventually fall in on itself, and now you just have nothingness instead of like actual stories? So maybe kind of moving away from the established Mass Effect formula out a little bit is a smart idea, but Dragon Age Inquisition really surprised me with how good it was. I think BioWare is listening to a lot of the complaints about their games over the past couple years, and I think they can do something special. At the very least, the shooting mechanics in Mass Effect have always been great. I'm excited to see more, but I was kind of surprised that all we got was kind of a very brief CG trailer without
just
any sign of
CG.
gameplay. Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
said it's what, late next year. So,
Yeah, I would imagine that might get pushed to like spring 2017, but a fall 2016 release date seems likely. And then Sony happened. And Sony just, it's not an RPG, obviously, but Sony just drops the hammer on everybody by starting their conference with The Last Guardian. Like, we were all sitting there like, okay, they're probably going to start with Uncharted 4, and it's going to look good, and Steven's going to be clutching at everybody saying how awesome it looks.
hey, Jeremy loves Uncharted too.
But they
I
just,
do. I'm so excited. Oh my god.
but
I'm there with you.
they just start with Last Guardian, and like, the feeling of validation, like for a trailer that we saw 6 years ago, to actually see like running gameplay, like somebody was playing through that demo, it warmed my heart a little bit, and it was hard to be cynical at E3 after that. It was like, aw, like I've been waiting so long for this, and here it is, and this feels really special, this feels great. And that was a moment of like, Sony got it. Like, I think Sony knew, like, we've been talking about this game for so long. We've been so excited. Here it is. And at that point, you're like, okay, the sky is now the limit. If they march a Final Fantasy VII remake out at me, I'm not going to be surprised. And then they did. And the world just, I was just screaming, no, I can't believe this is
Oh
happening.
my god, man! When the live stream was on the monitors up
Yep.
there, just trailing across those three big screens, I was just turning. I turned over to Liz and I was like, "Are they doing this right now? Are you kidding me?
Yep, they're
Is this
doing it.
happening?"
They're doing it. Now,
Yeah, I briefly remember some smaller trailers afterwards. Couldn't tell you the names. Don't know what happened. For like 10 minutes afterwards, just like, are they still showing things? What's happening right now?
we were officially in the Final Fantasy VII afterglow at that
Yeah.
point. Like, it was just, it was an amazing reveal trailer because you weren't 100% sure while you're watching it. Like, in the back of your head, there you're like, okay, this might be something different. I'm not exactly sure here. But then, of course, all they had to do was show Barrett's gun arm, and I would have
Yeah.
loved it if he went out and did the gorilla thing. Like, I was really hoping that's how we were going to start this. And that brings up something, Jeremy, you wrote a great editorial that's up on the site right now. Like, the discussions that we had on the bus ride home from Sony's press conference all revolved around Final Fantasy VII. And how do you remake this quirky ass game. This game that if you play it now, I don't think younger gamers will really understand just how crazy that game is unless you play it. I mean, you have cross-dressing, which, Jeremy said, no cross-dress, no buy. Like, Cloud's running around. Cloud better be hot. That's all I'm going to say. When he cross-dresses, he better be really hot. You have snowboarding mini games. You have a cat riding a giant Moogle. Like, this game is insane. Do we think that that's the game we're going to get, or are we going to get kind of the Final Fantasy VII Advent childrenized version of that story?
Yeah, and I think what makes it especially scary is that they could totally do that. Like, the game is, at its beginning about basically environmental terrorism. So they could totally go down this, like, serious, gritty path. But, when you sit around and think about all the nostalgic moments from that game, they're, exactly what you're saying. Like, oh, man, I love snowboarding. Or, Golden Saucer was amazing. Like,
Cloud
that's
riding
really
a
what you think
dolphin.
about.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Honeybee Inn. I mean, is Honeybee Inn going to be in the game? Like, there's so many avenues that they could go down with this, And then I asked the question, is this going to be a traditional turn-based role-playing game? And I honestly don't know. Like, we might get an action RPG. We might get something like Crisis Core. I really don't. I would not want to be Square Enix right now because if we're being honest, they're screwed. No matter what they do with this game, they're going to piss off some element of the fan base. That's just a fact.
I
Yeah.
don't think there's any way it can play the same.
You don't think
That's
it's going to
just
be a turn-based game?
pitfall of playing it, though.
I think it could be turn-based, but I don't think it's going to be exactly the same system. Like it's going to be more like Final Fantasy 13 style if they do turn-based, like active real-time kind of thing. I cannot see them doing like this 3 people in a row run forward one at a time to attack kind of thing. Like I know that's great. I love that in games, but I just don't think that they can justify spending all the money they're spending on this and then remaking it with the exact same system, if that makes sense. Like people are going to want something new out of this, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. And then there's going to be people like me that want to play that same kind of system. I mean, we were talking, I think, the next day about how when you play Final Fantasy VII now, that's one of the snappiest combat systems ever. Like it is super fast.
It's
like
faster than 8 and 9.
Yeah, and that makes it, I feel, far more playable than 8 or 9. Like I love 9. I know somewhere Steven just like cried out in pain because we're, talking a little bit of smack on 9, but like 9 spends so much time like even just getting into the battle.
I wouldn't even say I'm talking smack on 9 because like I also love
just
9,
different,
but I recognize that it's slower and that's its thing. Like that's okay.
Yeah, I think the speed of 7 like plays directly into why I like the Persona games so much. Like, I would love a turn-based, speedy style game. I think Steven was saying we would probably see something along the lines of 10-2. I think that's a very real possibility. I think if it is that kind of turn-based active time battle, it'll look like 10-2.
I could see that.
I can totally see it going the 13 route personally. Just because 13
Sorry, what?
You can make that noise, but when you talk about snappy changes and paradigm shifts and all that, to me in my head, it's the same type of action.
Yeah,
like it's just a quick change, like, all right, I need to react to this. You press the button and snap, you're just there.
Yeah, if you want
I can totally see them going down that.
If you want to play Cruise Control, the video game, that's fine. I mean, that's perfectly okay, Jeremy. Like,
it's not though. But...
Well, I'm not saying they should include, press X to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of doubt that they will, but I can see something along those lines.
Yeah. I feel the same.
Yeah, I think as long as it's not an action RPG, like I don't want to play a game where I'm controlling Cloud and like swinging the Buster Sword. I'm not really interested in that style game because to me, 7 is about that ensemble cast. And, I think little things like Vincent and Yuffie actually having a story presence in this game, that's pretty much assured. Like they're not going to be side characters that just do the cape flap whenever somebody's talking to them. Like if you had Yuffie and Vincent in your party, Final Fantasy VII was even weirder because there'd be moments where just nobody said anything. They're just like,
well,
yeah.
I don't even think that they could do it that way, to be honest, like just controlling Cloud. Just because, like, 7, a big part of it was going out and finding your limit breaks and, if for them to take that away would just take away so much from the game.
Yeah, I mean, are we going to see an overworld like Final Fantasy 15? Are we going to see, I want I want a completely up-resed Final Fantasy 7 on PlayStation 4 Cloud with Popeye arms. Like, I just want him to look like completely realistic, but have the Popeye arms. Like, that's how crazy this game is. So, like, more power to Square Enix. They're doing exactly what the fans want. But I think like now we're starting to see the articles coming out of people saying like, should they really do this? It's like after almost 10 years of talking about this and complaining that they need to do it, now they're going to do it. And the fact is that you're going to get the good and the bad as a result of that. Like there's going to be good stuff that you're really happy about. And no matter what they do, as long as they don't make Greedo shoot first, like we're going to be okay. You know?
Yeah, I think honestly it's going to be a commercial success regardless.
Oh, God, yes.
Like a lot of people are going to go out and say like why they shouldn't or what they should or shouldn't change it. With every single announcement they do confirming something, those people are going to come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
But, they can say that when it comes out, they're still buying it.
Yep.
They're going to. They have to at this point.
I'm calling it the title's going to be Reunion Final Fantasy VII.
I think you're right.
I think
Yeah,
I think it's very telling that they didn't put a title on the trailer, and I think they might incorporate some story aspects from Crisis Core or God help me, things from Advent Children. I don't think it's just going to be Final Fantasy VII. I think it's going to have some sprinklings of the compilation of Final Fantasy VII stuff in there.
I think it definitely
Totally.
needs like Zack for sure to be more than just an optional flashback.
Yep.
But
Well, like in the Shinra Mansion, they could easily just throw in like, all right, like here's a few extra encyclopedias, read up about the past.
Yay, lore!
Exactly.
I'm excited. I felt like a 12-year-old kid again with that announcement. Like, I know it was totally pandering, fanboy, but like, I was 12 when I played Final Fantasy VII.
I mean,
like,
is it wrong though? I don't feel like you have to justify
Oh no,
your
it's not.
enthusiasm.
It's not a negative at all. Like, there's so many articles out there now about how like you start getting very disenfranchised with video games as you get older because you remember the magic of playing them as a kid. And I agree with that to an extent, but like right now playing The Witcher 3 at 30, I feel the same way I did when I played Final Fantasy VII at 12. I'm being very honest when I say that. That's one of the best things I can say about Witcher 3. Like, I just have this sense of wonder and exploration, and that I'm lost in this world. I'm just completely lost in that game the way I was lost with Final Fantasy VII. So, there is part of this whole thing that you could make the argument that it's pandering, but I don't feel that way. I think that if this is Square Enix saying, look, our fans really want this, we want to deliver something in a very positive way, and if anything, Square Enix has been doing a very good job of listening to their fans, I think this could be something really special.
Yep, I think
Totally.
pandering would just be if they release something that clearly had no thought behind it. Like if they announce, well, in 2 months, surprise, we're releasing like Final Fantasy VII 1.5 or like some weird, like really low budget, same engine, whatever. But it shows that they're really taking their time, and they have said in numerous interviews how carefully they're handling the project because how much it means to them and the fans, and they want to make sure they deliver something worthy of its legacy.
Yep.
And they totally could have as well. Like they could have done like a 7.5 and it would have sold. It would have made them tons of money.
Oh yeah.
So the fact that they've waited to like redo or remake the entire thing really shows that they want to do it right.
I think it's going to be interesting to watch what these release dates line up with. So, Final Fantasy 15, Kingdom Hearts 3, Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Those are 3 super high-profile games. I think Square Enix is going to push really hard for Final Fantasy 7 to come out in 2017 because that'll be the 20-year anniversary. So it would not surprise me if maybe Kingdom Hearts got pushed back a little bit. Might still come out relatively close to when it was originally scheduled, but it would not surprise me if a lot of development effort just got wholesale switched over to Final Fantasy VII.
And I can hear Steven's tears right now.
Well, we're going to talk about Kingdom Hearts 3 because I think now we got to move, briefly, lastly in Sony under our umbrella. Unfortunately, we didn't get Persona 5, which I was completely wrong on that. I thought that was going to be a huge announcement, but instead it turned out to be Final Fantasy 7. I'm okay to be wrong on that.
Yeah, well, I'm okay with a new announcement over a trailer of a game we already know is coming this year.
Yeah.
Horizon Zero Dawn, which I think damn near stole the show.
Surprise.
In terms of, Guerrilla Games gets to make something that isn't Killzone, and it was gorgeous, had aspects of Monster Hunter. Kyle got a chance to see it behind closed doors and said it is an RPG. You level up the character, has a deep crafting system. Like that game just surprised me because it was like so different than what else was being shown on the floor. Like it was very colorful. It had this very realized world, and it was just exciting to see Guerrilla doing something different.
Yeah, when I saw their name come up on the screen, I checked out immediately. I was like, whatever. And then I watched that trailer, and I was like, holy crap, this looks amazing. This looks nothing like I thought it would. And
yeah,
for me, it was definitely like the surprise game of the show. I mean, FF7 Remake and Shenmue 3 were huge surprises, yes, and Last Guardian. They were all gigantic. But like, as far as completely new, never been thought of before kind of thing, never been like brand new IP, brand new. That was the thing that really swept me off my feet, and I wish it would have been playable on the show floor, but it was just a video.
Yeah,
I think that definitely came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and there have been leaks for a little bit that Guerrilla was working on some kind of RPG. I think that game's really far out. I think that's a 2017 title for sure. But looked interesting. Looked really interesting. Now we get to go to Square Enix. Who? Wow, that press conference. Wow.
They showed a couple of good things, but that was not a good conference at all.
Yeah, I mean that.
How about that Final Fantasy Worlds, huh?
Forever the game that was announced before the Final Fantasy VII remake.
I still don't know what that's about.
I know, what is that game? Like, I don't know. Square Enix, I think, got press conferences used to be more geared toward investors. Like, here are the games that are coming out. Here's our market strategy. Think back to the Little Big Planet like pie chart conference where they tried to guss up like all their numbers and everything. That's what press conferences used to be. Now press conferences are on Spike TV. They're being streamed online. They're just all video game announcements all the time. They're basically commercials. Somebody forgot to tell Square Enix that a press conference is basically a commercial. So we got lots of really, really long pauses and drawn out talk. At one point, the translator seems to have fallen asleep, and we were just listening to a Japanese person, and I was just staring at Derek and Steven like, are you guys going to interpret this? Because I don't know what's happening. But sprinkled in that conference were some really cool announcements. So, Kingdom Hearts 3, we got to see that running. It looked like a real game. Looked very impressive. Like, it's using kind of a very subtle cell shading look. So it kind of popped, and the color was just super vibrant on that. I can't remember anything else about that trailer because Steven was yelling at everybody to be quiet in the room and was just basking in that trailer for the rest of E3. But it looked cool. And if Kingdom Hearts can kind of recapture the magic for me of Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, I'll be on board.
I think actually, when you mention color once again, because you mentioned it in Horizon and in Kingdom Hearts 3, color is kind of like the running theme for this show that really swept me off my feet. Like the reemergence of color in big budget games, like studios realizing that, no, we don't just want gritty, dark, blah, shooting the guys. Like, we actually want things that are vibrant, that are alive, that capture the imagination. And Kingdom Hearts was another game representative of that. I mean, we knew Kingdom Hearts was going to be colorful because it's Kingdom Hearts, but it was really nice to see.
Look at Fallout 4, right? Like, compared to Fallout 3. Or
because they have, exactly. They have the post-apocalyptic environments, and they have that grittiness that people come to expect, but they also have color. They also show a world that's alive and not made of frickin' like brown Legos. I'm tired of that.
I would agree with you. I think color was hugely important, and I think getting out of the confines of what we've come to expect from AAA game development was kind of hugely important this year. So Square Enix shows Kingdom Hearts, kind of brings the house down. They then show the exact same Final Fantasy VII video again, which I think that's a clear sign that that was always going to be a part of their press conference. And then Sony was like, "We'll take that. We'll show
this
that."
is pretty big. I think we can give it a better spot.
Yeah, like
Let's borrow this.
can you imagine if our first look at Final Fantasy VII would have been during that Square Enix press conference? It would have lost all.
No, I actually can't imagine that at all.
It would have been terrible. It would have lost all impact. Then we got near
Hashtag.
near. We don't know what to call it yet, but it's being made by Platinum. But with being made by Platinum, you got to wonder which Platinum are you getting? Are you getting good Platinum or are you getting B Team Platinum?
What's B Team Platinum for you?
B-Team
What does B Team make?
B Team makes Legend of Korra.
Oh no!
And Platinum is
I
making.
don't think they'll B team it. I really doubt it.
How many games is Platinum making right now? Like Scalebound? Aren't they also working on that Metroid game? They're working on Nier. There were a couple. Like Platinum is making everything now, and I'm like, what happened here? Like I think Platinum's pretty good. Don't get me wrong, but what in the world is going on here? Did everybody just play Bayonetta 2 and lost their damn minds?
Well, Bayonetta 2 was really good. So
I haven't played it.
Hopefully.
Nier, what do you guys think of that? Is that something that you guys are really excited about?
yes, because
Okay.
I think the first Nier is a game that has kind of an understated beauty, and that sounds really pretentious, but I think there's a lot to be gained from playing Nier. I think it's one of the more artistic games out there in terms of like the story it tells and the meta narrative it crafts, almost like, because that game is not at all what it seems like in the very beginning, because at the beginning it seems like just your average like middling action RPG with kind of bad controls and like combat, but there's so much more to it, and it definitely has a ton of flaws. Like that studio has this weird thing where they can't seem to make games that work well, but they always deliver uniquely, like weirdly singular experiences. I don't know what it is. So I think with Platinum there, working on it, I think they can definitely make it a more playable game while still delivering that weirdness that we've come to expect in the series. They also always have amazing music, and it's the same composer on it, Keiichi Okabe. So that's exciting.
I've asked you guys before, and I'm going to ask again. Should I play the original Nier?
I can't really answer that because it's janky as hell.
Oh,
Because
God.
I know that you're gonna, like, if you play it, you're gonna come to me and ask me like, why did you make me play this? What the hell's wrong with you? Like, what is this game? And then I'll tell you, Rob, it's okay. Listen to my wisdom. Keep playing. And then you won't, and then you'll forever be like, yeah, one time Derek told me to play Nier and it sucked. I don't know what he was talking about.
I know a little bit of the meta narrative that goes on with the game and like having to beat it a couple of times. Like I know some of that from scanning wiki articles. That aspect of the game I find really interesting, almost in kind of like a Shadow of the Colossus, like you have to peel the layers back a little bit.
Yeah.
Like
It's such a strange game. Like,
I
I can
like
tell
that
you that I didn't really enjoy playing it for a while.
oh god.
There was and I don't think that any game should have to. I don't think games should be like that. I don't think you should have to suffer, to excess to enjoy something at the end. But it's one that I stuck with, and the payoff was like really unexpectedly rewarding. So
Mhm.
I don't really know what to say about it. I couldn't even rate it really. It's weird.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
so
I'm
I-
kind of in the Rob camp actually, where I tried it and I just couldn't get into it, and I can't see Rob suffering through it. But maybe a Let's Play or something would be for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's worth experiencing. Is it worth playing yourself? Maybe not.
Jesse, were you trying to get in there on Nier?
Well, I think I had a similar experience to Jeremy, and I had this feeling, maybe it was from reading, other reviews and other people's comments on it, but that it was something there that I really wanted to find, but I couldn't stick with it. So
I think that's justified, honestly.
Mhm.
I don't think any of you guys are wrong for doing that. I think it's one of those games that you have to be really committed to uncovering its secrets in
Mhm.
order to get everything out of it. and that involves some degree of masochism, so it's not for everybody.
Oh God. Well, I'm excited to see what they do with it. I think it's one of those games that you don't expect to get a sequel, and now it kind of is, and that's cool. It sounds like there's going to be 3 playable characters, so they have a plan for that game. It's more than kind of the nebulous trailer that they started with. There was also a lot of that at E3 this year. A lot of like, we're going to give you like the first initial announcement of this, and then like stay tuned for Gamescom. It's like now we have all of these different conventions over the course of the year. They don't have to shoot everything at E3. So like last year you got the Bloodborne announcement and like a gameplay demo, and then at Gamescom the game was playable. Like 2 months later the game was playable for the general public. So I think that we're seeing more and more of that as kind of like, start the excitement with one of the conventions, then allow people to play it. Like I said, Horizon Zero Dawn might be really far out, but maybe it's not. I mean, some of the announcements at E3, like Fallout 4 coming out in November, the new Hitman game coming out in December, like this is shocking to me that like in the past few years where, how many years have we been seeing Metal Gear Solid 5? We've been seeing that game since 2012, and it's finally coming out. 3 years running up for that game. And meanwhile, we have titles that are being announced and delivered within a year of being shown. Like, that's crazy to me right now. It's
there's definitely like a trickle system with it where they're like, all right, well, E3 press conference, here's a little here. Over the next few weeks, we'll do interviews. And then, like you said, Gamescom will roll around, and I'm sure we'll get more.
Yep, TGS. I think we'll kind of end the press conference with like, talking about Persona 5 briefly and how it was at E3, but it was just an English language trailer, which was disappointing until the news kind of came out that game is apparently coming out in the West this year, like in 2015. Like, what?
I was wondering if they were going to stick to that because they had never given any indication to the contrary. But I mean, if you think about it, it seems so unlikely. But
it seems nuts to me for that game to be coming out unless they are doing kind of what they did with Catherine, where it's being localized at the same time they're making it.
Yeah.
Which is a possibility.
Jeremy and I were talking about this actually, and personally, because there was a new trailer that came out today.
Yep.
And it was awesome.
Technically. I don't know if it's even technically out yet.
It leaked, yeah.
You can find it.
The bonus DVD that came with Persona 4 Dancing All Night in Japan. There was a trailer there, and people finally ripped it and uploaded it, and now it's everywhere, so Atlas can't take them down fast enough. But it looks amazing. But at this point, like especially with the second trailer, which just showed some really preliminary gameplay, I've seen enough. I'm in.
Oh yeah.
I'm ready for Persona 5, and I actually don't want any more of it spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't want to know who all the playable characters are. Like I just want. I want to experience that game with a sense of wonder and mystery, and that's not something we get often because there's such a marketing push for everything these days that you get trailers that outline story element after story element after story element. And I feel like a lot of the times by the time I get a game, it's like, well, I know, at least half of what's going to happen, and it's kind of a bummer.
Well, there's also like a sense of camaraderie that we kind of experienced today because, we're texting back and forth, and we're both just really like full of excitement and questions about everything, and you kind of miss out on some of that when they release everything right away, So it's nice to be able to like text your friend like, oh man, did you see the new trailer? Like, what's going on with the prison cell? Like, who's going to be in it? Who's this guy in the alley? Like, it's nice to have that sort of sense of wonder about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't need them to have a website that says like, name of character. And it's like a mysterious painter who the characters encounter. What message does he have for them? Like, I don't need that. Just let me figure it out.
I'm with you, Derek. Like, I'm on board with that game. I don't need to see any more. And I kind of like how the new trailer today didn't show a whole lot. And it showed like a little bit of battle scenes, a little bit of the ideas of the game, and I'm like, okay, I'm in media blackout now. I don't want to see anything else. I just want that game. I'm going to play it. I'm going to love it. If that game comes out in 2015, I just don't even know what to make of this year. Like this year has been insane.
And an incredibly Merry Christmas.
Yeah, and I mean that in a very positive way. Like, I know it's kind of easy to see a lot of these big releases that have come out on the new consoles as, giant disappointments. And that was kind of the narrative that was being created for a long time with games like Watch Dogs and the new Assassin's Creed. Like, not to beat up on Ubisoft, but it's so damn easy sometimes. But there was so much disappointment around this console generation, and then you look at the stuff that's coming out now, and it's like, whoa, we're okay. We're doing okay. So now I think it's time for us to talk about the games that we actually saw at the show, games we got to spend some time with. And Jeremy, I think it's time for you and I to do this. All right.
Let's do it.
Uh,
Dark Souls 3. Amazing.
Yep. So, nope, you're wrong.
I'm totally right.
So we got a behind closed doors demo of Dark Souls 3. I'm sure everybody's going to see gameplay for it because it's going to be at Gamescom. They're probably going to let it be playable. Hidetaka Miyazaki was there. I got to shake his hand, and surprisingly enough, spiders did not come out of it, and I was not absorbed into like some dark realm. He seemed super nice guy, super mild mannered. He was demoing the game, and at the end of the demo, there was a QA session, and I raised up my hand because I'm that guy, and I said, who's directing the game? And Miyazaki-san said, I am, because he understands, I think, a little bit of English. So he said, I'm directing it, and I did praise the son in front of him, totally fangirled a little bit. And then the Namco PR person kind of jumped in and said, well, he's co-directing it. He came onto this project late, but he's been in a supervisor role, and now he's co-directing the game. And what I saw at a Dark Souls 3, I've had like a week to mull it over in my head. What I saw at a Dark Souls 3 was a sequel. I saw a sequel to Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. I saw a lot of the same gameplay ideas. There was a little bit of new stuff with like the weapon stances and being able to use different attacks while in like a power stance or something like that. But to me, it felt really familiar, and I had to go back to listen to back when Zach was on the show, way back in the day, and Dark Souls was just announced. And I said back on that show, like, I'm really excited to play Dark Souls, but I don't want to have this experience too many times. Like Demon Souls, I think every Souls game takes a little piece of you with it. And, Demon Souls was so amazing, and so was Dark Souls. And Dark Souls 2 was okay, and Bloodborne reignited my love again. But, like, it just looked so damn similar that I'm not really interested in it. But then Jeremy went and saw it, and you loved it.
I did really love it, and I think that, because we kind of had this conversation before where, you can kind of get fatigued on Dark Souls, and for me, I was lucky enough to skip Dark Souls 2, apparently that was a lucky move on my part, but I never played Dark Souls 2, so to me, when I went to see it, something that they said kind of in the beginning of it was like, this is the evolution of Dark Souls, this is, kind of where we're getting to the perfection of what we think Dark Souls is, and that was exactly what I saw. I saw, a better battle system, more variety as far as how you attack and how you handle different situations. And then just, a finer tuned Dark Souls that, looked to build upon a successful formula. Mm-hmm. So for me, I wasn't looking at it like, oh God, the same thing. I was looking at it like they did it. They found the perfect Dark Souls child, and I want it. I want to play it now.
Mm-hmm. And, there was a little bit. There were a couple things in the demo that did interest me. I like the one kind of black, inky, almost octopus-like enemy that erupted out of a corpse. I thought that was interesting. There was a boss that kind of behaved cool because she was kind of a dancer-like boss, so she had very like subtle movements and like
the way she walked around.
But if we're being honest, it's just another giant enemy with two swords, which was kind of the giant glaring flaw with Dark Souls 2. And I guess for me, the argument comes down to, if you think about it, I know this is a radio podcast, so you got to bear with me here a little bit, listeners. But if you think about like a straight vertical line was Demon Souls to Dark Souls, and then Dark Souls to Dark Souls 2. And then you kind of had like a branch into Bloodborne where like, the new combat system, the speed of the game, the regenerating health, the transforming weapons kind of made that game its own. I kind of wanted another game, maybe not necessarily called Dark Souls 3, to kind of go in the opposite way, like maybe make it a little bit more realistic, maybe make it even more of like a give and take of battle. Like we saw For Honor at Ubisoft, which was their kind of like 3-on-3 melee-based combat game that's using a lot of stances and very subtle movement and really focused in on like the intricacies of sword play. And I was kind of like, maybe that's kind of what I wanted. Like, if Bloodborne's going the real action, in your face route, maybe I want something that's a little bit more subtle. Maybe I want something that's a little bit more intense, almost like the Deep Down videos. Maybe that's what I wanted. But, Derek, I kind of want to get you in here for a second because you didn't like the Souls games, but then Bloodborne, you were kind of more in tune with. Does the idea of going back to Souls after Bloodborne hold any interest for you?
I'm not sure. It completely depends on how those systems have evolved. Like, I have to get my hands on it, or at least see some good footage of what it's going to play like. Because if it's the things that bug me about the Souls games were more like operational, like system level things. Like we've talked about this on previous shows about how I think Bloodborne is just more streamlined, and I think as long as Dark Souls 3 takes those alterations, it might be more appealing to me. But I'm not sure.
Okay. I guess like I came back from E3 and I got a little bit of time to play Bloodborne again, and I'm really excited for the expansion whenever we learn more about that. And I don't know, Jeremy. I plug Bloodborne in, and that just sings to me in a way that when I played a little bit of Dark Souls the other day too, and I still love Dark Souls. Don't get me wrong. Like, I still adore that game, but like Bloodborne,
You got the fatigue, man. You're
I
worn
th-
out.
I think
I don't
that's
know how
part
else
of
to
it.
put it.
I
Because
think that's part of it.
to me, I think the difference in our thought patterns on it is that to you, Bloodborne is the continuation of the Dark Souls franchise, but to me, they're separate games. Like I can look at Dark Souls and I can look at Bloodborne and say like, okay, well, Bloodborne to me is a different beast. They're both fun, they're both interesting, but I don't mesh them together in my head the way that I think you do.
I
So
think
when
it's
Dark
fair.
Souls 3
It's fair.
came out, I think you wanted Bloodborne 2 and you got Dark Souls 3. Like, I don't think that means that Dark Souls 3 is less of a game or not going to be good. It's just, it's the next version of it. It's to me, what I think is going to be the epitome of the Dark Souls experience. So I think if you're a Dark Souls fan and you're not worn out, you're going to play it and you're going to love it. But if you played, Bloodborne and you're like, I put Dark Souls behind me, I'm ready to move forward into Bloodborne, I don't know if you're going to have as good of a time.
Yep.
I think that's true.
That's kind of how I felt. Maybe it'll be really good. I kind of feel like I'm gonna sit this one out. I think you're right. I think I got to get the fatigue out of my system. I have zero desire like that DLC for Dark Souls 2. I know I'm like the one person that didn't like it, but I really didn't like it. I found it to be very lazy in terms of gameplay design and just threw massive mobs of enemies at you instead of doing anything interesting. So, maybe Miyazaki can pull it off. I think it's a little telling that this game has been in development for 2 years, which means that they've been working on it before you even got a chance to play Dark Souls 2. That's a little concerning. I think that shows that they went right away to AAA game design 101, and maybe that means it'll be good. I don't know, but I'm kind of out, and I think Jeremy's right. I think I was more excited for a Bloodborne 2 than a Dark Souls 3, but we're gonna find out soon because apparently it comes out in early 2016. We shall see.
I will gladly play it. Don't you worry.
Okay, I think you're reviewing it. I don't want. I don't want to. I don't want to. So I've been talking a lot. So I want other people to kind of jump in with stuff that they saw on the show floor. Like, tell me about some of the stuff you guys saw.
Mm,
I'm.
I
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I saw it's going to be obvious for me, but the stuff I was most interested to see was like I saw Trails of Cold Steel. That was awesome. It doesn't, it's Trails. It's the Trails series in 3D. It doesn't play super differently from like Trails in the Sky. So if you're not into story-heavy traditional turn-based RPGs, you're not going to like it. But I think it looks fantastic, and I know I love the soundtrack. It's a lot to be excited about. It's the kind of game that doesn't demo all that well because it's just you doing a turn-based battle. Like, cool. But it looked great. I was really happy to see that. I was surprised that Disgaea 5 looks pretty cool. I got to play that. We had an appointment with them. Andrew and I saw it. Andrew liked it a lot. He's a really big Disgaea fan, and I was earlier on, and I lost interest in the series around 3, so I'm kind of interested again, and that's neat. I don't think there were any like huge surprises on the show floor for me this year, which was a little bit of a bummer. There wasn't any game that I stumbled across and just went, "Whoa, this looks awesome." It was all kind of stuff that I knew I wanted to check out, that I was glad to get my hands on. But the show floor for me was weaker than the conferences, which were just mind-blowingly good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I was like, just to go into that kind of same like, oh my God, where did this come from? For me, that had to be Death's Gambit. And I know you were there, Derek, with me for a little bit to kind of take a look at it. I'm so excited about that game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I got to sit and talk with one of the creators, Alex Kubadera, about it, and it looks so exciting to me. It's got the Metroidvania points to it, the Dark Souls kind of look, all with like Shadow of the Colossus bosses. Like I'm just so excited to see it, and I don't know what else to say about it.
And that trailer really piqued my interest. After I read your preview and watched the trailer, I was like, okay, I can get down with this. I think.
Yeah, the preview is going to be up, I think, within the next day or so. But yeah, it just looks really fun, and it was interesting because the creator was telling me that they have so many things that are set up, not just to be like, kind of a Metroidvania hack and slash sort of thing, but they also have everything set up for speedrunners as well, and different ways to go about streamlining the process to get through the game, and it just really seems like they're taking everything into account for it.
Mm-hmm. So I got to play Death's Gambit a little bit too, and I also played Salt and Sanctuary, and those were two kind of like 2D inspired by Dark Souls type games. But I think Death's Gambit kind of set itself aside because it was going for massive boss encounters, almost along the lines of Shadow of the Colossus. Like that's what they were talking about with their game, which I found very interesting. I will say though that both games kind of had the same issue when it came to controls, like trying to have this very measured amount of movement in a 2D space. There were times where like I would be hitting the enemy, but I'd be slowly like moving through them because you don't take damage from rubbing up against an enemy like you do in like old school Castlevania games or Mega Man. So I'd end up like slowly moving through the enemy and then have to like shift my body back around to keep attacking them. So both games kind of had that. It didn't feel solid yet, but I was excited what both games were doing, and the pixel art style of Death's Gambit was very striking, and the kind of like I almost want to say paper mache look of Salt and Sanctuary, where it feels like really pieced together. Those two games were very striking on the show floor. On a side note, though, if anybody is listening who runs Indiecade, I don't know what you guys were smoking, but that Indiecade booth was a mess compared to last year where it was so open and it was easy to walk around and talk to people. The new Indiecade booth felt like a little petting zoo with a gate around it. Like you had to walk into this very uncomfortable space and like it was super cramped. Death's Gambit was actually outside of that area, which was really good for it. But it was like impossible to see what games were inside of that Indiecade booth. It was like between that and the Microsoft booth, which was like the black hole nexus of death because you couldn't even move around. Like they just need to work on like basic booth setup. Did anybody go near Sony where like Project Morpheus was? That was like a salmon swimming upstream if you got into that area. Like you were going to get swept into seeing Project Morpheus even if you didn't want to. That was weird.
Well, it wasn't just them. I mean, Nintendo on their side around the Mario Maker. Oh my God, it was terrible.
You can't go near Nintendo. You're just gonna die. Like somebody's just gonna. All you have to shout is like, "There's a new amiibo," and people are gonna get like ripped apart on the show floor, like just eviscerated. So yeah, those were some good games that we saw on the floor. Jesse, did you see anything that really like jumped out at you?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Banner Saga 2, and I was already really anticipating that one, but I played their demo, and it really blew me away. It's sort of more of the same, right? They haven't strayed too far in terms of their storytelling or their gameplay, but they've really just refined everything. And right, the Banner Saga is really kind of defined by choice, right? And so I think they put a lot of emphasis on giving you even more choice, making the choices feel important, giving them sort of gravity. And I can't wait for that game. Oh my goodness.
I still need to play the first one. I'm a really bad person.
You are.
Well, we've known that for a long time.
I know.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
know.
Although I do have to say, I should have mentioned it before, but best game I saw on the show floor, best game of the entire show, needs to win all of our awards. Butt sniffing pugs, man.
ooh, it was
That
so
was the game we
good.
saw. They had this game, right? So it's like this. It was an indie game. It was at the Indiecade, and I still don't know what it was about, but it looked like a kind of sandboxy 2D thing where you played as a pug, and the controller was like, if you can imagine a hollowed out arcade stick box flipped on its back. It had a plush dog butt sticking out of it, just like the butt end of a dog, with a giant ball that was basically like a giant trackball that you just maneuvered around, and two buttons, and you moved your pug around and had to sniff the other pug's butts, and you got powers like giving yourself extra big poops, and it was amazing, and I want to know more about it. And then we talked to the creator for a minute, and he was really, really nice, and he said to me, I quote, "I just want to have fun butt stuff."
And after that, Derek was in. He was sold.
I just don't even know what to make of what's happening now.
Let's have fun butt stuff. Anyway, it was hilarious.
It's just a flowering of creativity going on in games.
God, did you have to say flowering? Oh my god.
Oh my god!
I got to see Deus Ex. Holy crap. I was so like, we've talked before about how disappointed I was with Thief, which was the second game from Eidos Montreal after, Human Revolution was a great game, and then Thief was kind of a giant ball of human filth. Like, it just did not work at all.
It's your trigger word now, yeah.
It felt like it was made by 17 different development studios with 3 different directors, and nobody knew what the hell they were doing. And then it was shoved out the door, like stitched together with rigging tape. And then I see Mankind Divided, and I'm like, wow, this is just, it would be easy to say it's just bigger, better Deus Ex, like, just bigger levels and more powers. But I think what surprised me so much was like the synergy between everything that was being done. Like, it had a lot more of a BioShock feel with like weapon in one hand and powers in the other. So Adam wasn't just using like a power and then going back to like regular sneaking. He was like using his rifle and like slowing down other characters and like hitting them, or using the Icarus rush to knock them up in the air, or stealthing in between cover. Now you can do takedowns from cover. Like, I wrote up a pretty big preview for it because I was just so surprised how everything seemed to be working in this game. It was like, we know what made the first game so fun, which was the powers, and now we've just blown it up. We've just blown up everything that we've done. And at the risk of maybe making it sound negative, I got a real BioShock Infinite feel, like when we saw that first gameplay reveal for BioShock Infinite, and it just felt like BioShock completely blown out. That's how I felt when I was watching this demo, but apparently this game is coming out sooner rather than later, and somebody was actually playing it in front of me. So it felt like a real game, but it just felt like a really big version of Human Revolution. I was really impressed with that game. It was one of the most striking games I saw at E3.
I get it, because he strikes people to kill them.
Yep, nobody cares.
Oh.
Nobody cares that game looks awesome.
I just haven't finished Human Revolution. In fact, I've only gotten like 3 hours into it ever. So while I think that could be cool, I was actually I was kind of put off by the first reveal trailer for Human Revolution, the new one, because it was just like, watch him kill people in high def. It was like, it seemed very thematically inconsistent, but I don't know, like. I wasn't super into it from what I saw.
I can see it. I think the music is what got me in that trailer, because they used a little bit of the Icarus theme from the original Deus Ex reveal. But I think when you see the game in motion, you really get a sense that they've opened it up. And to have this game coming out probably pretty close to Dishonored 2. One game's in our coverage because Deus Ex is more of an RPG, but I think that those two games will play off each other very well. I love choice in my games. I love it when developers give me the ability to solve problems my way. I think Human Revolution did a good job of that. I think Dishonored did a better job of that. And so if the Mankind Divided team is like, look, we got to show up Dishonored, and the Dishonored team is like, we got to show up the Human Revolution people. That just creates good games. You know what I mean? When everybody just pushes each other to be as
Yeah,
good as they possibly can be.
healthy competition.
Yeah, no, you want healthy competition in the industry. So yeah, Mankind Divided kind of ended up being one of those games that really surprised me. Now, I have a game I want to ask you guys about. Do you guys know what Mordheim City of the Damned is?
I do now.
So this became a running joke of E3 because when I was scheduled for Mordheim, being completely honest, which is a video game version of the tabletop game workshop Warhammer game, I was so not interested, like at all. I was just like, all right, I guess this is like my penance for getting to go see Deus Ex, whatever. I'll go see this. And then I sit down to watch this demo, and Jeremy's right next to me, and I just lean over at him and I'm like, this game's Valkyria Chronicles. Like, what in the world is going on here right now? Like, every advertisement for this game makes it look like an action RPG, like, gritty, dark, medieval, like, kind of Bloodborne-esque. And then you start playing the damn game, and it's just Valkyria Chronicles, and that's awesome.
I totally thought it was going to be like a medieval Team Fortress, to be completely
Yeah.
honest. I had no clue.
I couldn't believe it. Like it, and now the game's in early access now. You can play it. It's a little rough around the edges. Like it needs some animation work and stuff. They're still working on it. They're being very honest about that. But just some of the cool things going on in that game, like characters have permadeath. You can have a character that gets their leg torn off, and then they'll come back to your army weeks later, and they have like a peg leg. You can play online against other people, and the permadeath is still on. Like that game just feels so cool. Like I don't know if I'm gonna get into the aesthetic. Like I'm not super down with that, really gritty, kind of nasty Game Workshop look. But to go from zero to interested in the title just from a demo, I actually told the guys, like, if you look at their Steam page right now, if you watch a video for that game, it just looks like Jeremy saying it could be a medieval Team Fortress game. And it's not. It's actually a Valkyria Chronicles style game. So if you want to see something a little different, I would recommend to the listeners look at Mordheim. It's a little surprising,
Yeah, and
something.
just to kind of like set people at ease, because like you said, it is kind of still in development, but the folks behind their forums are actually paying really good attention to all of the feedback that the players are giving them, those who sign up for the early access. So if there is a problem, like don't think that it's permanent. Like they're seriously taking the fan feedback into account. Like if you just go to their like Steam page, you can see the recent updates that they've made, and it's kind of crazy how many changes they've been making.
Hmm. It was a cool one. I love it when surprises like that happen at E3, where like I go from I'm not going to be interested in this at all. This is going to be stupid, or you think you know exactly what the game is, and then it turns out nope, wasn't even close. Didn't even have a good idea.
Always nice.
Yep. So what else did people see?
I
Jesse.
got to try the Oculus Rift. I actually went to the quote unquote Oculus E3 press conference that was like the week before in San Francisco. But I made an appointment, stood in line, and I tried Chronos, which is from Gunfire Games. They made Darksiders 2, I think. And so it's an action RPG. The way the guy described it is like they're fishing in the same pond as Shadow of the Colossus and Ico, right? It's sort of very stark and atmospheric, and you're just a lone guy crawling through this labyrinth. But obviously, the big difference is you have a VR headset. And I was really skeptical because it's a third-person view, right? So you're not doing it from the character's point of view. They said that was making people sick, and it just wouldn't work. So I thought, like, what the hell is the point if you're just gonna if you're not gonna be in the first person view? But when I put that headset on, and I looked over the side of the cliff, and I got a little bit of vertigo. Like that's when it really hit me that like this could be like a really transformative technology and can really, just change the way you experience a game. Like it was like being able to look, just like to really look around the room like you're in the room was like nothing I'd ever experienced in a game before.
Mm-hmm.
And the game itself, yeah. Jeremy, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think we're all just kind of like a little, not sure what to think of it. So to hear that at least it, gave you that feeling is nice.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's a lot of hype around VR technology, and I'm a little wary, right? I think it's too easy to get swept up in these things, but when you try it on, it really is something different, right? And that's if we're always kind of questing after the next big thing and the new thing, like this is definitely going to give you something that you haven't seen before. And the game itself, I felt played well. The controls are pretty tight, and I'm not a big action RPG person myself, but I felt like I had a good handle, and like I was very mobile, which was nice. And the other gimmick that they're doing is, instead of having a leveling mechanic, you basically go into the dungeon, and every time you die, you get kicked out and you age a year. So you're following this character through his life, right? So you start out, you're a young man, you're quick and you're agile. You get older, you slow down a little bit, but you get a little wiser. You get some magic. So I think that they've got some interesting premises, and they at least put together a good demo. So
Cool. That's actually one of my big shames of E3 was I didn't get a chance to try any of the VR stuff. The lines were better this year than they had been last year, but I still just didn't have the time to kind of sit down and say, okay, I'm going to stay in line for a little bit and actually try out this VR demo.
That may be part of why I wasn't wowed by so much on the show floor this year, just because I didn't have the time to go to a lot of stuff. Like we had a ton of appointments.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Kyle kept us busy.
Well, there was a lot to see. I mean,
no, there definitely was. Like it was a big show, and I think that's right. Like we were all still coming off of the press conferences, which had so much stuff that it was still like once we got to the show floor, we were still thinking about that stuff. So. No, I think it was a great E3. I definitely felt like there was more to see this year than last year. And, I walked away going, I love video games again. And that's all I can really ask for, I guess.
Yeah, I walked away exhausted, but very happy.
I think we were all very exhausted.
Yeah. Still tired, man.
Yeah, no, I'm still trying to, catch up on my sleep here a little bit and get back into the swing of things. Anything else that people saw that they got to spend some time gushing about?
Robert, did you play Moon Hunters?
I did not. I saw Moon Hunters. I was right next to it for a little bit, so I got to watch it a little bit. It looked cool. Kind of a top-down, kind of co-op-y game. I thought it looked interesting. It did. I just didn't have a time to put any real effort into it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of want to make sure we talk about Until Dawn.
Oh God! Okay, let's talk about Moon Hunters, then we'll get to Until Dawn. That's right, I forgot about that. So Moon Hunters, Jesse.
Moon Hunters. I mean, I got to play with just another random person off the floor. It was a lot of fun. I like co-op games a lot, and I like that it's procedurally generated, so the world will sort of build randomly, but then it'll also react to your choices, right? If you're compassionate and you cultivate a reputation for being compassionate, people will react to you one way, and differently if you are vengeful, which I completely accidentally ended up being vengeful. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It seemed like it had a lot of potential, and I got to speak to the woman who had built the game, and it was nice to sort of feel her passion for the game.
That's one of my favorite parts about E3 is getting to talk to developers, because you kind of get a better sense for what's going on with their game and whether or not you're going to be interested in it.
It's kind of surreal, because Andrew and I also played Moon Hunters, and we were playing it, and we didn't even realize, because there were a couple of people hovering around, but I didn't see any. They were turned around, and then the developer came up to us, And it took me a minute to realize, because she was like, "Oh yeah, if you go over there, you can click on that thing." And I was like, "Oh okay, some person just played this game and is giving me advice." Like, I have no idea why I didn't connect in my mind that she was the dev for a second. I was like, "Oh, holy crap! Like, I'm talking to the maker of this game. This is amazing."
Yeah. Well, I think their badges said Sony. Like they didn't identify them by their development studio, which was
Oh
really
yeah,
strange.
then I guess maybe I just thought that she was like demoing it,
Yeah, that's what I
like
thought
a Sony
first.
employee. But yeah, that was cool, and I was also into it from what little I played. I think those kinds of games are great for couch co-op, and I miss the days when I would get together with people like Jeremy and play things like that. So I think it shows promise.
hmm hmm And there were a lot of indie titles at both booths. Like I got to play Below again, which I think once again was like my favorite game of the show that I got to actually play. I really wish there were just more RPG mechanics and we would actually cover it. But there were so many games on the show floor, like so many indie titles that you kind of had to walk around a little bit to see the stuff and see what you really wanted to spend time with. And I like that. I feel like I'm discovering something when I walk around the show floor and I do something like that. All right, Jeremy, set the stage for Until Dawn.
Oh man, this game looks so brutal, and I love it. It's kind of in the same vein as like Heavy Rain, those kind of games where you're really just kind of making the decisions and navigating through quick time events. But man, the options they gave you, oof.
hmm So
Ugh.
it's kind of set up like a 1980s or 1990s teen horror movie. So like in my preview, I talked about how there's a bunch of horny teenagers hanging out at this cabin in the woods, and then one of them ends up missing, and they start dying one by one. But the decisions that you make in the game impact who stays alive and who stays dead. So the first time I played it through, the character I was playing as at the end of it, he ended up dead. And I kind of had this moment where I was like, well, how much choice did I actually have in the experience? Could I actually save him? You start having that Heavy Rain feeling of how much of this was scripted, how much of this was really up to my decision. And then when I started watching other people play it, and there were things like, oh, if you get the flare gun and you give it to that character, the flare gun actually lets them get away and they don't end up dead. Or if you make a mistake at the very beginning of the scene and miss a quick time prompt, that character dies right away and not later on in the scene. So it felt very visceral. It felt very gruesome. Andrew actually said that he couldn't watch when the hook part happened. He was like
Either.
really freaked
Yeah.
out by that. But it was just so interesting and so damn different from everything else that was on the show floor that that game may end up completely falling apart and the story might be completely nonsensical, but what they showed, I am like completely into that game and I just want to play it with my wife, making decisions about where we want to go and what we want to do in the game, and that was just a really cool demo.
Yeah, I really couldn't believe how different the experiences were. Like, cause the demo was what, like 20 minutes?
Yeah, it was a
But
long demo.
yeah, but even like from the very beginning, like one of the very first decisions could just decide, like, all right, well, am I moving forward with two? Is someone dying? It's crazy to think that someone else, like, for even that short span of time, can have such a drastically different experience.
hmm hmm it was cool. It was cool. And again, it could completely fall apart, but that game is right around the corner. It's coming out August 25th, and I am just really excited to see more out of that game. I want to know more about Until Dawn, and I kind of want that to be my Heavy Rain. Like I want that to be the game that I remember so fondly, and I don't get hung up on story beats or how uninteractive the game is. And I think there's a complete lack of pretentiousness with the game that also has me completely into it. Like it knows that it's a schlocky horror fest, and I respect it more for that. Like we're not having conversations about oh, is this game going to be the height of human emotion, and is it going to do everything different than what we've ever seen before? I kind of like the fact that it just knows what it is right now. But that was another surprise at the show that I was like way more into than I thought I would be.
It looks rough.
Do you mean rough in terms of like gameplay wise?
Like brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be super brutal. A lot of people are gonna have a lot of trouble.
Yep. And I'm okay with that. So. All right, what else do we have, guys? Or are we starting to wind down here?
We had a lot of fun playing. We had a lot of fun dancing for Persona 4
Yeah.
Dancing all
You
night.
guys did do that.
Yeah.
We got
There's
them
even
T-shirts.
There's a video of it. We had fun doing that, and I played the game, and I love rhythm games, so I was happy to get my hands on it. It plays well. It has a story mode. That's a thing. Like, it's Persona, so I shouldn't be surprised, but it's got a
after the
story.
Persona fighting game story, I feel like they're just kind of like, why not?
It's sad because I'm kind of burned out on Persona 4 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a huge Persona fan, but the first spin-off for Persona 4, I was like, awesome, and then Persona 4 Golden, amazing, and then they didn't stop. They just kept going. I've gotten so much Persona 4, it's enough.
Well, we're ready for Persona 5. I think that's half the problem.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm playing Persona 4 right now.
See, that's the exact same thing. Maybe you just don't get burned out, Jeremy. Like we're over here wanting new stuff. Man. That could be it. We might have figured you out.
Maybe that's my thing. Maybe I just don't get burned out. I really don't know.
Maybe that's it. I don't know.
It's
but
a
yeah,
weird superpower, but I'll take it.
You guys were dancing for Persona 4 Dancing All Night. That was kind of cool. A lot of games over at Atlus's booth and at Xseed's booth. Not a whole lot of stuff that I'm super interested in, but lots of games available for people that are interested in those kinds of titles. That's my nice way of saying
people who are interested in.
That's my nice way of saying I have zero interest in those games. But I'm being honest. Like they're not for me, but that's totally fine. Like if other people want to play those are fine. Just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, Rob's E3 takeaway. Mordheim looks all right. That's it. Everything else, terrible.
Oh, that's not true. I was speaking so highly about other games. You're not going to paint me into a box like that.
Deus Ex, all right.
You're not going to paint me into a box like that. Come on, I was positive on...
You made that box yourself, sir.
I'm the one who's being positive about a Final Fantasy VII remake, okay? Like, meanwhile, the rest of the internet now, a week later, is going, is this something we really want? After 10 years of bitching and moaning that they want it.
Shut up, you want it.
Yeah, the fact is that, yes, you all do want it. So just enjoy it.
Well, we definitely want it, so...
I guess things just keep popping up. Another thing I saw was Dragon Quest Heroes, which I wasn't sure if we were going to cover, since it's basically a Musou game, like a Dynasty Warriors game. And we didn't really cover we didn't review Hyrule Warriors, did we?
I don't think
we did.
I don't think so.
Like an initial story on it.
Yeah, that's what we did. We just kind of touched upon it, but that game doesn't have enough. I mean, like we covered Zelda as an exception anyway, but Dragon Quest Heroes actually is a Dynasty Warriors style game, but it has full-on RPG elements like leveling up, character customization with skills. You get equipment, you can craft accessories. You have HP. Like when you hit enemies in the game, it pops up with the HP damage they take, a la old Dragon Quest. It actually looks really good. It runs at 60 frames, which was like super impressive to me. Because usually, I don't know what it is about Dynasty Warriors games. They just run like crap usually, and that always turns me off. But
which demo did you play? Because they
played the one with the Cyclops. Okay,
because like the one with the Cyclops, Andrew and I were playing it, and we just kept looking at each other like, this is really dull, and like it's taking forever to kill this thing, and we both don't want to play this right now.
I think your criticisms of that particular thing are overblown, and you're fixating on one thing. Like,
did you play it?
Yes, I did, and it just had too much HP. That was it. So they could just lower the amount of HP it has, and the problem's fixed.
Okay,
mechanically it worked. It just took too long.
Okay, that's fair. That could definitely be a factor of it. I thought the game looked gorgeous. Like I think that Toriyama art style looks great in HD as long as they like keep it very cartoonified. Like that looked really good, and I want that game to be good. I think there was a level of disappointment. I just got done saying I wasn't going to be negative, but here I am. Here we go. I was disappointed that was the only Dragon Quest game at E3.
That's reasonable. Yeah,
like,
I was too.
Yeah.
Out of all
You're allowed to have that disappointment.
Out of all the Dragon Quest games, that was the one. And, maybe that doing well will mean I get more Dragon Quest in America, but that was a little... I could have done with more regular Dragon Quest and not that. That was a little upsetting. But, it is what it is. Apparently those games don't sell as well here in America as I would like them to. And there really isn't a whole lot I can do about that, except just keep proselytizing them and trying to get people to play them.
I don't know. I'm not a huge Dragon Quest fan, but I can totally see like the Hyrule Warriors fans seeing it and thinking like, oh, maybe I'll enjoy this too, and then hopefully getting more into Dragon Quest.
Mm-hmm. It could hit it off. It could
It could happen.
It was weird having Mighty Number 9 at Square Enix's booth with the worst controllers on the E3 show floor.
God.
Holy crap. Like, they had these Mad Catz controllers that just, they barely even pressed in when you press the button. So the whole time I'm sitting there playing it like, what's going on? Is this good? And Mike came over and he was like, yeah, it doesn't feel great. And then Mike went and played Mighty Number 9 somewhere else, and he comes back and went, don't worry, it was just the controllers. Everything's fine. It was just the controllers. I don't know what they were thinking, but that was weird.
Everything felt mushy.
Yeah, it just really... was like, what is going on here?
Yeah, Derek and I were there with Mike as well when we kind of got to play it later, and it felt great when I played it. I assume Derek feels the same.
Yeah. It controlled better than I thought it would. I've been a pretty vocal critic of Mighty Number 9 up to this point, and I still think it looks worse than it could. I still think it looks kind of amateur visually, but it sure does play well. So
it's weird. Like, I was still getting used to the whole like being able to dash through multiple enemies. Like, it always felt like I would dash through one, and then I didn't quite understand that I had to keep dashing. So there's a learning curve to that game. It's not just, shoot stuff and watch it explode. Like, watching people have a really hard time beating the first boss in that demo, because the game doesn't tell you have to dash into them. It looks like you're doing damage, and then the game's like, oh, they start regenerating, and you have to use the dash attack. The entire game is built around that. So that was kind of neat to watch, is like people were struggling with a new gameplay mechanic in a traditional 2D side-scrolling shooter, like kind of action-y game.
Hopefully, whenever they actually release the game, their first level will include, some enemies or something to at least lead players into doing that. So
right, kind of get...
I'm sure that's just kind of like, the ignorance of not knowing.
Yeah. That's game design 101. Like, you got to let me know that we can do everything. Or you could take the Witcher approach and just assume that I know how everything works, and then just completely turn people off to that game. Like, I have students that are still like, how the hell do I play the Witcher? And I'm like, you got to read some FAQs, dude. You'll figure it out.
I know you love it, but they could do that Bloodborne approach where the first hour is just incredibly rough.
I found it very comforting.
You're such a liar.
No, I did find the beginning of Bloodborne really, really hard. I did. Like, it took me a while for everything to click. Like, mechanically, I understood what was going on, but I had to get myself into that mindset of like, oh, I need to know exactly what I'm doing. So, it was cool. It was cool. So E3, I think we're all positive on, correct?
Oh, most definitely. Great E3 to be at.
Yeah.
Great first one.
Yep, yeah. First one for Jesse and Jeremy. What'd you guys think?
So glad that it was a good one to go to. The press conference and the great games that they had there. Like, even if you're not excited about all of them, the fact that there were so many, just, I don't know. It's, for me, a great E3 to be, have my first one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm ever going to really top that. It seems like there was so much there. It was almost overwhelming.
Well, next year you're going to play the Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's how we're going to actually top it next year. So yeah, I think it was a super positive show. I think we all saw lots of different games, and like we were talking about before, Gamescom is right around the corner, and then TGS. Hopefully we can get Steven to TGS since he's going to Japan. That'll be kind of like, what else is coming, and are these games now going to be playable that we saw? Oh, I forgot a quick hit. I now understand Divinity Original Sin because I got to play it with Steven, and that console version is going to be pretty damn good. They did a really good job of outfitting those mouse and keyboard controls for console. That game is meant to be played with a partner. Like, playing that game single player was like, okay, this is okay. I'm controlling my units. But playing it together in turn-based strategy, that was really, really cool. That was really, really cool. As Derek yells at me to pull up iTunes real quick, so I'm going to do that. So Derek, hold the show down for a second.
Speaking of which, weren't you supposed to give us copies of that? Not that you're.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I gotta know. I gotta find out if it's my kind of game or if I'll be.
They gave me a DVD and a code. So what I'll do is I'll send the DVD to you guys, and then the code I'll just I'll email that to you guys. So yeah, just give me that.
Hopefully, we can try Mordheim too, because those guys were talking about sending us early access codes.
Yeah,
as
I want to
well.
give that game a shot. I want to see what it's all about. It might.
I want to
be...
give it a shot, and then I want to massacre you specifically.
Wow, okay. Have you even beaten Bloodborne yet, fool? Have you even beaten
Of
that
course
game?
I have. Are you kidding me? We talked about this already.
Oh man, I
I'm
don't
trying
know.
to bring my cred into this.
I don't know, man. I mean, you're talking
Just
a lot
because
of
the Dark Souls DLC just defeated you.
It
Don't
did.
act like it's gonna be easy.
It did kind of defeat me a little bit. On the plus side, though, getting out of that Dark Souls 3 demo, I was given the Dark Souls of Chargers, which was kind of neat.
You were.
Was.
I'm jealous of that.
I totally got one too.
All right, so before we end the podcast, I wanted to go through. We got some podcast reviews on the iTunes page, and I am a shill, and I love to kind of read these out loud. A lot of really good criticism on them, which I think we're looking for positive feedback. There are definitely things that we can work on. So right away, let's start off. I think we did Ken's before. But I think I'll read from Ken's again. This is from Ken. I drive a lot for my work, meaning I have a lot of free time to listen to music and radio. After hundreds of hours of music, I started to listen to the radio a lot more often than music. Eventually, I started to get bored by topics that had no relation to my interests in life and hobbies. It struck me like lightning. The idea of podcasts had fully come to fruition in my brain, as I had never listened to a podcast in my life. Podcasts are radio with topics you want to hear. That being said, this is my first podcast that I've been listening to for about a year now. These guys are fantastic. Oh, thanks. And I didn't force him to write that. I feel like I could hang out with these guys and drink a beer with. Come to SoCal and we got a brewery hopping. I know Rob is a Scotch man, but still, that is true. I am a Scotch man, and I didn't drink any Scotch at E3. I was too tired. The cast is colorful, well-spoken, informative, and funny. Their thoughts on games and everything about them, about those games, music, art, story, and gameplay are usually right in tune with my own associations. Rob, Steven, and Derek are my favorite cast members to listen to. Aw, thanks. Really, Derek? Really? One of your favorites? Really?
Whoa!
Oh man.
Love you. Keep up
needlessly
the great
dickish.
work, guys. I love the show. P.S. I don't like iTunes, or this review would have been sent out a long time ago. Thank you so much, dude.
Rob.
We got some positive criticism from Rarul87. So he said, but often I see the hosts, Mr. Steinman in particular, you don't have to call me Mr. Steinman, I'm not a teacher right now, offering statements that are absolutist in their standing as opposed to subjective viewpoints. There are plenty of games worthy of scrutiny and critique, but I feel that the discussion sometimes boils down to my experience was bad, ergo this game was bad and should not be played, as opposed to here's what made up my experience, here's why it didn't appeal to me, and here's who it may appeal to. I think that's a very fair criticism. I will say that I'm the one who does that more than anybody else on the show. I think Derek and Steven, our other two regulars, are really good at playing devil's advocate and looking for the other side. I try to back up what I'm saying. I think maybe I do sometimes have a tendency to say, I don't like this game, and maybe leave it at that, where I could articulate my point a little bit. But when it comes to games like Final Fantasy 13, I just don't like it. And that I can't articulate it more like that. But that is good criticism, and I do appreciate that. That's how we make the show better. Let's see. The Mito...
The Me Too School.
The Me Too School. I'm so bad at reading that stuff.
Never forget Grain of a River.
I know. I've been listening.
He loves it like good pizza.
I've been listening since the beginning, and I would say this: it's the kind of podcast where you listen to some cool guys, really cool guys, really even me, telling you good games and that you've heard of, good games you haven't, and bad games that you should ignore, like Dark Souls 3. If you don't have friends,
Wrong.
Oh my God.
Oh, there I go again. If you don't have friends to talk to about RPGs twice a month, this is a good place to start. And then Soul Bad Dude, fun podcast. You guys are funny and have varied taste. However, I would like a female opinion on some these matters. And that's definitely something that we're trying to do. We've had Caitlin on the show. We'd love to get Liz back on the show. We love hearing from different avenues, different voices when it comes to games. We had some really good discussion at E3, and I think that's something we can continue to do. So thanks again so much to you guys for the input. We definitely love the positive criticism. Keep it coming our way. Again, we want to keep it positive so we can do better. Once again, I'm very sorry that this podcast was late. I'm actually going to edit this right now, and you should have it in your hands about 10 minutes after I hit the stop button on the record. So for Derek, Jeremy, and Jesse, thanks again for listening, and we will see you all later.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye bye.
Honk.